All right, let's dive into this deep dive into The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck.
Sounds good.
We've got excerpts here from the 25th anniversary edition, and um, we're really going to kind of dig into some of the ideas in there
Okay.
about discipline, love, and spiritual growth. And, I don't want to just give like a book summary or anything.
Right.
I really want to try to uncover some of those like surprising connections
Yeah.
between those things and kind of see them in a new light.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really interesting is how the book even became a bestseller.
Okay.
It wasn't like an overnight success. It
Right.
kind of gained momentum through word of mouth, especially within like Alcoholics Anonymous. So Peck himself was even surprised by the success of it.
I mean, it speaks to how deeply his ideas resonate with people.
Right.
People who are really grappling with, maybe addiction and recovery and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, you wonder what struck such a chord with people. And Peck actually attributed a lot of the success to a single review by the author Phyllis Theroux.
Wow.
And, it just goes to show like the impact of a single, well-placed, insightful review.
That's amazing. One review sparking a movement.
It can be like a seed that grows into this whole forest of readers.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Now, getting into the book, he starts with a thought-provoking premise that life is essentially a series of problems.
Right.
When I first read that, I was like, well, that's cheery.
Yeah, it can seem a bit pessimistic at first,
Yeah.
but he's not trying to be a downer.
Okay.
What he's saying is it's a call to action.
Okay.
He sees problems not as obstacles to avoid, but as the things that actually push us to grow.
Okay.
He even says problems are the cutting edge that distinguishes between success and failure.
So instead of fearing problems, we should almost welcome them as opportunities.
Precisely. You think about it, like when you reflect on some of the challenges you've overcome, those are probably the times you learn the most about yourself.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's in those fires we discover what we're made of.
Exactly.
So how does he say we can navigate these inevitable problems?
Well, he introduces the concept of discipline.
Okay.
Now, not in the traditional sense of like strict rules, but as a set of tools to help us solve life's problems and grow as individuals.
So when you say discipline, what's different about his view of discipline?
Well, he outlines 4 tools of discipline:
Okay.
delaying gratification, accepting responsibility, dedication to truth, and balancing.
Okay.
And it's not about restriction, but about empowerment.
Got it.
Giving yourself the tools to face the challenges head on.
I like that discipline as a toolkit for life.
Yeah.
And he links this idea to love, and I'm really intrigued about his perspective on love.
Yeah, absolutely. And he argues that they're deeply intertwined, especially in parenting.
Okay.
And Peck believed that consistent love from parents creates a sense of security for a child, and that secure foundation allows them to develop self-discipline.
Okay, so a child who feels safe and loved is more likely to have that patience and self-control to work towards their goals.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And he illustrated this connection with a story about a woman who struggled with time management.
Yeah.
And she only learned to organize and protect her time after she learned to truly value it.
If you don't think you're worthy of something, you won't put in the effort to protect it.
Right.
That's interesting. And that reminds me of how he's pretty adamant about debunking some of those common myths about love.
Oh, he is.
What are some of those myths that he takes on?
Well, one of the biggest ones is this whole romanticized version of love that's portrayed in movies and books,
Yeah.
the love at first sight, happily ever after kind of thing.
Right.
And he believed that chasing after this ideal often leads to disappointment.
It's like don't follow your heart kind of thing.
Right. It takes more than that.
Yeah.
And he saw this in his patients' lives, They were chasing after this ideal that really rarely matched reality.
I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But we are bombarded with all those narratives and those expectations.
We are.
What other misconceptions about love did he challenge?
Another big one is the idea that dependency equals love.
Okay.
True love. He believed involved freedom and choice, not clinging and neediness. He even compared dependency to a form of parasitism.
Wow.
Relying on someone for your survival isn't true love.
So it's not about needing someone to complete you. It's about choosing to be with someone.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this leads to his core definition of love.
Okay.
He defines it as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own and another's spiritual growth.
So actively choosing to contribute to your growth and the growth of the other person,
Exactly.
even when that initial spark fades,
Exactly. It's about conscious effort and commitment.
when those warm, fuzzy feelings ebb and flow.
Right, because they will.
Yeah,
It's less about what you feel and more about how you choose to act.
I like that. And he gives that example of choosing not to act on feelings of love for someone outside of one's marriage.
Right.
You're making a choice
Absolutely.
to stay true to your commitments, even when there's temptation.
Exactly.
Wow. And then he also links love to listen.
And the art of truly listening.
Okay.
You know, he emphasized how much effort it takes to really hear someone,
Yeah.
to put your own thoughts and judgments aside, and just be present with them.
He even tells that story about attending a lecture by this renowned sage.
Yes.
And he was so focused on absorbing every word, even though he said he only understood about half of it,
Right.
but he felt so enriched.
Right. And other people were like, we didn't learn anything. It was so confusing.
Right.
But for him, it was this really powerful experience.
That is so powerful.
It's about giving someone that gift of your full attention,
Yeah,
showing them that they are worthy of your time and presence.
I love that.
It creates a safe space for vulnerability and connection,
Yeah.
which can be so healing.
It's like saying, I see you. I hear you.
Absolutely.
I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Now, he acknowledges that this path of love and growth isn't without its risks.
Right.
He's honest about that.
He embraces the inherent risks that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
He even uses the term cathexis
Okay.
to describe that emotional investment we make in people and things.
Right.
So the more we care,
Yeah.
the more we risk getting hurt.
If we experience loss,
Exactly.
is it even possible to love without opening ourselves up to the possibility of pain?
That's a great question. And Peck argues that trying to avoid pain altogether means missing out on the richness of life.
Okay.
It's like avoiding a delicious meal because you're afraid of choking.
Wow. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights that discomfort and risk are intertwined with those rewarding experiences.
Exactly.
And he believes that living a full life requires embracing those risks,
Absolutely.
knowing that pain and loss are unavoidable.
Yeah.
That's a challenging mindset, but I think it's ultimately freeing
It is.
to think that way.
Yep.
And then he also explores this idea that love sometimes requires us to confront a loved one about a problem.
This is a tricky one.
Yeah.
It's about balancing respecting someone's autonomy with wanting to help them.
Yeah, it feels like a minefield.
It is a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And Peck acknowledged this.
Mhm.
He talked about respect our individual paths while also recognizing when we need to offer what he calls loving leadership.
So discerning when to step back and when to step in,
Exactly.
when to offer guidance and when to just be there.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a time when I actually had to have a hard conversation with a friend who was struggling with addiction.
Oh, wow.
And, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I knew it came from a place of love.
That sounds like you were practicing what Peck preaches,
Yeah, maybe.
offering that loving leadership. And
Yeah.
that brings us to another tool in his discipline toolkit,
Okay.
balance.
Balance.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how he talks about balance.
Well, he uses this rather striking analogy.
Yeah.
He compares managing our feelings to the art of slave owning.
That's a bold comparison.
It is.
Yeah.
But he wasn't condoning slavery.
Okay.
He uses this metaphor to highlight the need for a balanced approach.
So our feelings are like our slaves?
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
He argued that both neglecting our feelings entirely and ruthlessly suppressing them are harmful.
Okay.
It's about finding a middle path,
Okay.
treating our feelings with respect while also providing them with structure and direction.
So acknowledging them but not letting them run the show.
Exactly.
Okay.
He cautioned against being ruled by our emotions,
Right.
but also against denying them altogether.
Okay.
It's about that harmonious balance.
It's about integrating them into our lives in a healthy way,
Absolutely.
which I'm sure is no easy feat.
Not at all.
This is all so insightful, but it brings up the question, where does this capacity for love and growth even come from?
Right.
Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it something else?
That's one of the great mysteries he grapples with.
Yeah.
And he acknowledges there are a lot of unanswered questions about the source of love and our ability to grow.
So are we just left to ponder this?
He touches upon the concept of grace as a possible explanation.
Okay.
But even that remains a mystery.
Seems like he invites us to just lean into the unknown,
He does.
embrace those questions even when we don't have all the answers.
And that open-minded approach is what we'll need as we dive into the next section.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. We've been talking about love and discipline, But another concept he brings up is spiritual growth,
Okay.
which is a journey that unfolds throughout our lives.
I love that idea. It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to arrive at some perfect end state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process. And one of the interesting concepts he introduces in this context is transference.
Okay.
It's a psychological term that describes how we often project past experiences,
Okay.
particularly from childhood, onto our present relationships.
So it's like carrying around this baggage from our past and letting it influence how we interact with people today.
Exactly. And if we're not aware of these transferences, they can really create problems in our lives.
Okay.
He uses an example of a patient named Stuart, who was struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts.
And his issues stem from a belief about God
Right.
and the world.
Yeah, it was this deeply ingrained belief that God was punitive and the world was a dangerous place.
Okay.
And this stemmed from his difficult childhood.
He had a really rough upbringing, right?
He did.
A lot of conflict.
His parents were constantly fighting.
Okay.
His older brothers were cruel to him.
Wow.
And so it led him to develop this worldview based on fear and mistrust.
So he's carrying this into adulthood,
Exactly.
even though his circumstances had changed.
He was projecting his childhood experiences onto his present life.
It's like he was trapped
Yeah,
by those past experiences.
exactly.
It's powerful how our past can limit us
It is.
if we don't examine those old beliefs.
And part of spiritual growth, he says, involves identifying those and challenging them.
Okay.
Recognizing when our perceptions are colored by past hurts.
Like taking off an old pair of glasses.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Putting on a new pair that allows us to see things more clearly.
Now, he also talks about the importance of skepticism in this context,
Yes,
which seems kind of counterintuitive.
it does.
When I think about spiritual growth,
Right.
isn't that the opposite of faith?
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
He's not advocating for cynicism or
Right.
blind doubt, but encouraging a questioning mind.
So examining those beliefs, questioning our assumptions,
Exactly.
seeing if they hold up.
Yeah, true faith isn't about blind acceptance.
Okay.
It's about seeking understanding,
Gotcha.
testing our beliefs against our experiences.
That makes it more active.
It does.
Like we're participating in it
Exactly.
rather than passively inheriting it.
Yeah, and he even suggests adopting a scientific mindset,
Okay.
looking for evidence.
To support or challenge those beliefs.
Exactly. And he illustrates this idea with a patient named Kathy,
Okay.
who was struggling with anxiety and guilt over her sexual desires.
So this is a great example
Yeah.
of the importance of questioning inherited beliefs
It is.
when they're causing us suffering.
Absolutely. And she had been raised in a very strict religious environment,
Okay.
internalized a lot of shame and fear
Around sexuality.
around sexuality.
Okay.
She was convinced God would punish her.
It's a lot to carry.
She was terrified.
Yeah.
And Peck, being both a psychiatrist and a spiritual seeker himself,
Yeah.
was in this unique position to help.
Okay.
He understood the power of faith, but also the harm of these rigid, fear-based beliefs.
So how did he approach this?
Well, he started by gently challenging her assumptions about God,
Okay.
pointing out that he had seen many people struggle with similar desires
Yeah.
who hadn't been punished,
Right.
encouraged her to develop a more nuanced understanding,
That's interesting.
one that wasn't based on fear.
It's like showing her how to apply that questioning lens
Precisely.
to her own beliefs.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to destroy her faith.
Right.
He was trying to help her cultivate a healthier relationship
With her spirituality.
with her spirituality, exactly.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
And he also talks about his own spiritual journey, right?
He does.
And how it evolved over time.
Yes, he's very open about that.
Like he mentions when he graduated from medical school, he didn't even believe in miracles.
Right.
And then something shifted.
As he gained more experience
Yeah.
as a psychiatrist,
Okay.
he started to encounter situations that he couldn't explain
Through science.
through a purely scientific lens.
Okay.
He started to see evidence of something larger at work.
Like there's more to it
Yes.
than meets the eye.
And what we can see or explain.
Okay.
And this led him to embrace the concept of grace,
Okay.
this mysterious force
Right.
that operates beyond our control.
That nudges us toward healing and growth.
Yeah, and he doesn't just talk about it theoretically.
He gives examples from his own practice.
He shares a story of this young man.
Yeah. The one who endured such a horrific childhood,
Yes.
filled with neglect, abuse, even prison.
And despite all of that,
Yeah.
this young man went on to achieve incredible things.
He really defied all the odds.
He did.
Yeah.
Became a successful businessman, a loving father, a community leader, even a talented artist.
It's amazing.
It is, and Peck admits he can't fully explain this transformation.
Through a simple cause and effect.
Right.
Right?
He sees it as evidence of something more.
Operating beyond our understanding.
Yes, something beyond our current understanding of the human psyche.
Like there's a force out there invested in our growth.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
It challenges this notion that we're completely on our own,
Right.
solely responsible for our successes and failures.
Like there's something bigger than us.
Yes.
That wants to see us reach our full potential.
Exactly. And he doesn't just focus on grace. He also talks about a counterforce,
Okay.
which he calls entropy.
Entropy. Okay.
He borrows this term from physics,
Okay.
which describes the tendency towards disorder and decay
Okay.
in the universe.
Okay.
A natural force that pulls us towards laziness, complacency.
It's that voice that tells us to stay put.
Exactly.
Destroying risks.
Stick with the familiar,
Yeah.
even when it's no longer serving us.
Right.
And Peck sees this resistance as a major obstacle to growth.
So we can't just wait for growth to happen.
No.
It takes effort and a willingness to embrace that discomfort.
And he was very clear about that.
Okay.
He even called laziness original sin,
Wow.
considered it the root of many problems.
Interesting. So he links evil back to laziness,
Yes.
which is a manifestation of entropy.
Right.
It's like giving in is self-sabotage.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And he takes this a step further
Okay.
by addressing the topic of evil.
The problem of evil.
Yes.
What's his take?
Well, he challenges the traditional view of evil as this external force.
Like a demonic entity.
Right, tempting us to do bad things.
Okay.
He believes evil arises from within us.
We all have the potential for evil.
We do.
That's intense.
It is. But he doesn't see this as a reason to despair.
Okay.
He argues that by understanding the nature of evil,
Yeah.
we can learn to recognize it
It's in ourselves.
and make different choices.
Okay.
So we're not just puppets
Right.
controlled by some external force.
We have agency.
Yes, we have the power to choose.
What were his conclusions about evil?
Well, first he concludes that evil is a force within humans that consistently tries to destroy the highest good and potential in others.
It's not just about doing bad things. It's about undermining goodness.
Exactly.
Okay.
And secondly, he says that evil is lazy.
Oh.
It takes the path of least resistance.
Okay.
It avoids effort.
Gotcha.
His third conclusion is that evil is a real phenomenon.
Not theoretical.
Not just theoretical. Those who have encountered it know this to be true. And finally, he concludes that evil is most powerful when it remains unrecognized.
The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Exactly. If we're not aware of its presence, it can operate unchecked.
We have to acknowledge it.
Yes, acknowledging and naming evil is the first step towards overcoming its influence.
Now, he also talks about this idea that our unconscious mind holds a wealth of wisdom and knowledge.
Yes. Peck was a huge believer in the power of the unconscious mind.
Okay.
He saw it as a wellspring of creativity, insight, guidance.
Like there's this hidden intelligence
Yes.
operating beneath the surface.
And he even suggests that the interface between God and humanity
Okay.
might be located in the realm of the unconscious.
Wow.
He uses the phrase, our unconscious is God.
That's a big statement.
It is.
Yeah.
It challenges the way we typically think about the divine.
Like we all have this divine spark.
Yes, a
It's-
connection to something greater.
Okay.
And he believed we could strengthen this connection through practices like dream analysis and meditation. Okay.
Techniques that help us tap into that wisdom.
But he observed that sometimes people try to force the process.
They do, like they meticulously record every detail of their dreams,
Right?
trying to analyze every symbol.
Trying to force it to bloom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he found that this often led to confusion.
Too much information.
Yes, an overwhelming amount of information.
Okay.
So he encouraged patients to simply observe their dreams.
Let them arise naturally.
Exactly. Trusting that the unconscious would reveal what was needed
When they were ready.
in its own time.
Yes.
Like surrendering to the process.
Yes.
Letting go of that control.
And he observed that when they took this approach, the quality of their dreams often improved.
Okay.
They became more insightful, more symbolic.
Like the unconscious was saying, okay, I see you're ready now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he saw these instances as examples of grace at work.
It all ties back to grace.
It does.
Yeah.
This force guiding us toward healing.
Even when we aren't trying.
even when we're not actively making it happen.
Now, he didn't just talk about these big concepts in isolation.
No.
He talked about the practical implications of spiritual growth.
Absolutely. He emphasized that true spiritual growth should lead to a greater capacity for love, compassion, responsibility.
It's not just thinking about it, it's about embodying it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about putting these qualities into action.
And he even talked about leadership.
Yes.
And how spiritual maturity helps us navigate that.
He uses a striking analogy, comparing the challenges of leadership to the decisions a general has to make during wartime.
That's heavy.
It is.
Talking about life or death decisions.
He is talking about the burden of responsibility.
Knowing that your choices have consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he suggests that spiritual growth can help us develop the wisdom
To make those tough calls.
to make those difficult choices, yes.
So the more spiritually mature we are, the better equipped we are to lead.
That's what he believed. He believed that the more spiritually mature we become, the more aware we are of our interconnectedness, the more compassionate we are towards others,
Okay.
the more responsible we feel for our actions.
It's like that ripple effect,
Right.
recognizing that we're all part of something larger.
And this expanded awareness doesn't make us passive.
Okay.
It's about developing the strength to act
Okay.
in alignment with our values,
Even when it's hard.
even when it's difficult.
Living our principles.
Yes, walking the talk.
Yeah.
And this brings us to one of the most intriguing ideas in the book,
Okay.
the paradoxical nature of grace.
Grace is a gift, but we also have to earn it.
He acknowledges that on one level, grace is bestowed upon us.
Like it's given to us.
Yes, something we don't have to strive for.
Okay.
It's like this divine spark
Okay.
that's ignited within us.
We can't make it happen, but we can create the conditions
Precisely.
for it to enter our lives.
Yes, and he believed that cultivating those conditions requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to surrender
To something greater.
to something greater than ourselves.
Like preparing the soil for a seed to grow.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
We can't force the seed to sprout,
Right.
but we can create an environment where it can thrive.
That really resonates with me.
Yeah,
That we have a role to play
absolutely.
in our spiritual development.
And he even compared this process
Okay.
to therapy itself,
Oh, interesting.
suggesting that therapy can be a path to accessing grace.
What do you think he meant by that?
Well, he believed that therapy can help us overcome our resistance,
Okay.
our clinging to old patterns, our fear of the unknown.
Okay.
It can help us clear away the obstacles.
To grace.
Yes, the things that are blocking the flow of grace.
Like it can make us more receptive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Creating more space for it to operate in our lives.
And that process can be challenging,
It can be.
but ultimately rewarding.
He believed the rewards were worth the effort.
The wound is the place where the light enters you.
Beautiful. And his final message in this section is one of hope.
Okay.
He believes that despite all the challenges, humanity is moving towards a greater state of awakening.
Like we're inching our way toward greater consciousness.
Yes,
Greater love.
greater understanding.
And we're all contributing to that
We are.
with our individual choices.
It's an ongoing process driven by both individual and collective efforts.
That's pretty amazing.
That is.
It's like this ripple effect.
Exactly.
Spreading outwards.
Touching the lives of others.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the heart of Peck's message,
What's that?
that we're not alone.
Okay.
There's something greater supporting us,
Okay.
and we each have the power to make a difference.
Yeah. It really is amazing to think about that, those little acts of love and awareness can contribute to something so much bigger.
It's a good reminder that we're all interconnected and that, our choices matter.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I wanted to circle back to something Peck mentions in the afterword of the book.
Oh.
And it's his advice for readers who might be considering therapy.
Oh, yeah. That's such an important topic,
Yeah.
especially with so much interest these days in, mental health and personal growth.
He really stresses that, choosing a therapist is not a decision to be taken lightly.
Right. It's a big decision.
Yeah.
It's a big investment.
Yeah.
And so finding that right fit is essential.
Yeah, he encourages people to look for a therapist. They trust someone. They feel comfortable with someone who challenges them, but also offers empathy and support.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah, and that not all therapists are created equal.
Right. There's a wide range of skill and experience out there.
And he even says that some of the most gifted therapists he's encountered didn't have those traditional credentials.
Right. Sometimes it's the people who have walked a difficult path themselves.
The wounded healer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They emerge with that wisdom and compassion to share.
And he recommends seeking recommendations from trusted friends or starting with a psychiatrist.
Right.
If you're dealing with more severe symptoms.
Yeah, if there are physical health concerns as well.
That makes sense.
A psychiatrist can help provide that comprehensive assessment.
Yeah.
Connect people with the right resources.
And he acknowledges that community clinics and hospital-based programs
Right.
can be valuable resources.
For people who might not have the financial means.
So there are options out there.
There are.
Even if cost is a barrier.
Yeah.
It sounds like his main point is that the responsibility for choosing a therapist rests with the individual.
Yeah. Trust your intuition.
Find someone who resonates with you.
Right. Remember that the therapeutic process is a collaborative journey.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the road less traveled, we've covered a lot of ground.
They have.
Discipline, love, spiritual growth.
Even the practical aspects of therapy.
Yeah, it's a book that challenges us to think deeply.
To embrace those complexities of life.
Yeah.
And really participate in our own evolution.
What stood out to you the most?
I think how Peck blends those psychological insights with spiritual wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like he provides this roadmap
For navigating life.
for navigating the ups and downs of human existence.
He reminds us that life is challenging.
And that those challenges are opportunities for growth.
To cultivate discipline.
To embrace a new perspective on love.
To confront those big questions.
About evil and grace and the power of the unconscious.
And he leaves us with that sense of hope.
That we're not alone and that we have the power to choose a path of growth and awakening.
It's been such a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
It has been.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the road less traveled.
We hope you found it insightful, and we encourage you to continue exploring these ideas on your own journey.
Thanks for listening.